Never in my life did I think I would become the kind of man who questioned his wife's every move. For years, Emily and I had what I thought was a steady, happy marriage. 12 years together, a small but cozy house, 2 kids we adored, and a life we had built brick by brick. I always believed trust was the foundation of our bond, until I started noticing the cracks. It began subtly. Emily had always been warm, quick to share a laugh, quick to touch my arm when we spoke. But lately, her warmth had cooled. At the dinner table, her eyes often drifted to her phone rather than staying with me. Conversations grew shorter, her replies sharp, as though my presence annoyed her. She had excuses. "It's just work stress, Daniel." Or, "I'm tired, please let me be." At first, I accepted them. After all, marriages go through rough patches, don't they? But then came the late nights. Emily, who used to be home before sunset, suddenly found endless reasons to stay at the office. Team projects, deadlines, meetings that somehow stretched until midnight. The first few times I told myself it was normal, that maybe her company was demanding more from her. Yet my gut told me otherwise. It was the little things that kept gnawing at me. The way she tilted her phone away whenever I walked into the room. How she started locking her screen with a new password she wouldn't share. How she claimed exhaustion whenever I reached for her in bed. She was there, but it felt like she was already gone. I tried to push the thoughts aside. I told myself I was being paranoid, that Emily was still the woman I married, the one who once looked at me as though I was the only man in the world. But deep down, something inside me whispered, "You're losing her, Daniel. And you don't even know to whom." The days turned into weeks, and with each passing night, the distance between Emily and me felt like an ocean widening, impossible to cross. She no longer laughed at my jokes. The small rituals we once shared, her morning kiss before I left for work, our late-night talks in the kitchen over tea, faded into silence. Our dinners became quiet battlegrounds. I'd ask about her day, and she'd shrug, eyes fixed on her plate. When I pressed further, her answers came curt, sometimes edged with irritation, as if my very curiosity was an intrusion. I told myself it was stress, that her job was weighing her down, but my heart knew better. At night I'd roll toward her, seeking the comfort of her embrace, only to be met with the cold wall of her turned back. "I'm tired, Daniel." "Not tonight." Those words became a refrain, echoing in my mind long after she drifted into restless sleep. It wasn't just physical closeness she withheld, it was emotional, spiritual. She was present, but her spirit felt somewhere else, somewhere I no longer belonged. Even the kids sensed it. Our daughter asked one night, "Why doesn't Mommy smile like before?" I had no answer. How could I explain a silence I didn't understand myself? I told her Mommy was busy, but deep inside, I feared the truth was far darker. I tried to fix it. I planned a weekend getaway, just the 2 of us. Emily agreed reluctantly, but once we arrived, she was glued to her phone, smiling faintly at messages she wouldn't share. When I asked, she claimed it was work. But I knew that smile. I had seen it before, only it used to be mine. The more I reached for her, the further she slipped away. I felt like a man clinging to the edge of a cliff. My hands raw, my strength fading, while the person I loved most looked down at me with indifference. And yet, despite the gnawing pain in my chest, I clung to hope. I told myself love doesn't vanish overnight. Maybe if I waited long enough, if I was patient, Emily would return to me. But somewhere deep down, a cruel voice whispered, "She's already gone, Daniel. You're just too afraid to see it." One Friday evening, Emily told me she had to stay late for another meeting. Her tone was casual, almost dismissive, as she slipped her laptop into her bag. But I caught the flicker in her eyes, the same look I had seen so many times when she thought I wasn't paying attention. I nodded, said nothing, and watched her drive away. But inside, something snapped. Weeks of doubt, months of silent torment, and countless excuses finally weighed too heavily to ignore. I couldn't spend another night pacing the living room, waiting for her key in the lock, pretending everything was fine. So, instead of heading home after work, I followed. My hands gripped the steering wheel tight, my heart pounding in a rhythm I couldn't control. A part of me hated myself for doing it. Was I really the kind of man who stalked his wife? But another part whispered the truth I could no longer deny. You already know what you'll find, Daniel. You just need to see it. Her car led me across town, not toward her office, but to a lively part of the city lined with bars and restaurants. I parked a short distance away, my stomach twisting with every passing second. For a brief moment I prayed I was wrong. Maybe she was meeting co-workers? Maybe I'd walk in, see her laughing with colleagues, and laugh at my own foolishness. But that hope was fragile, already cracking beneath the weight of reality. I sat in my car for what felt like an eternity, staring at the neon glow spilling from the windows of the place she entered. My breath came heavy, each inhale sharp with dread. I whispered to myself, "Don't do this. Don't go inside." But my body betrayed me, my legs carrying me forward step after step, toward a truth I already felt in my bones. And as I reached for the door, one thought echoed louder than the noise of the street. This is the moment, Daniel. Whatever you see in there will change everything. The bar was dimly lit, buzzing with laughter and the low hum of music. I paused just inside the doorway, my eyes scanning the crowded tables, my heart hammering against my ribs like it wanted to escape. And then I saw her. Emily sat at a corner booth, not surrounded by co-workers, not tired from the weight of deadlines. No, she was glowing, her face lit with laughter I hadn't heard in months. Her body leaned forward in that familiar, intimate way she used to lean toward me. And across from her sat a man. Jason, that was the name I would later learn. He wasn't anyone I recognized, not from her office, not from our circle of friends. A stranger. Yet the way she looked at him, the way her hand rested lightly on his forearm, made him feel like the most familiar person in her world. My breath caught in my throat. I froze, unable to move, unable to breathe. It wasn't just her laughter, it was that smile, the one she used to say for me. The smile that once made me feel like the luckiest man alive. Seeing it directed at him was like a knife, sliding slowly between my ribs. I wanted to look away. I wanted to turn around, pretend I hadn't seen, run back to my car, and bury myself in denial. But my eyes betrayed me, clinging to the scene unfolding in front of me. Every second branded itself into my memory. Her hand brushing his, the sparkle in her eyes, the sound of joy she no longer shared with me. For a moment, I questioned my own worth. What did he give her that I no longer could? What made him so deserving of her laughter, of her smile? I had built a life with this woman, given her my years, my love, my loyalty. And yet, here she was, offering her affection so freely to a stranger. I stood there, paralyzed by a mix of rage and heartbreak. My fists clenched at my sides, but I forced myself not to make a scene. Anger would only give her more power over me? No, what I felt wasn't just anger, it was devastation, a deep sorrow that hollowed me out from the inside. Then, almost by instinct, Emily turned. Her eyes met mine across the room. Her smile vanished. The laughter died in her throat. The color drained from her face, as though she'd seen a ghost. Jason shifted uncomfortably, following her gaze, his hand retreating from hers. In that instant, everything became crystal clear. There were no excuses left, no explanations that could undo what I had seen. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. This was betrayal, raw and undeniable. And as she stared at me, wide-eyed, trembling, I realized something profound. The woman I once loved was gone. The Emily sitting at that table wasn't my wife anymore. She was a stranger. My legs felt like stone, yet somehow they carried me forward. Each step toward their table echoed louder than the chatter and music surrounding us. I could see Emily's lips part as if to speak, but no sound came out. Jason shifted in his seat, his eyes darting between us, uncertain, uneasy. But I wasn't looking at him. He was nothing to me. My focus remained fixed on her. When I reached the table, I didn't shout. I didn't accuse. I didn't demand answers. She didn't deserve my anger. She had already stolen enough from me. Instead, I stood there in silence, my presence heavy enough to choke the air around us. Her voice finally broke through, fragile, trembling. Daniel, this isn't what it looks like. I almost laughed at the line, so rehearsed, so predictable. But I didn't. I simply looked at her, my eyes steady, calm, betraying none of the storm raging inside me. Then, without a word, I reached for my left hand. Slowly, deliberately, I slid off the wedding band that had lived there for 12 years. That small circle of gold had once been the symbol of everything we were, our vows, our love, the life we promised to build together. But at that moment, it was nothing more than a cold, hollow piece of metal. I placed it on the table in front of her. The sound of it against the wood was soft, almost insignificant, yet it cut through the room louder than any scream. Emily's hand shot forward instinctively, trembling fingers reaching for the ring, as though touching it could undo everything. But I pulled my hand back before she could graze my skin. Her eyes welled with tears. "Please, Daniel, wait. Don't do this." Her voice cracked, desperate, as if the reality of her actions was only now dawning on her. Jason looked away, his shame written across his face. But he wasn't the one who mattered. He hadn't stood before me, vowing to love me through better or worse. He hadn't been the one I trusted with my soul. That betrayal was hers, and hers alone. I leaned closer, not to whisper a word, but to make sure she saw the finality in my eyes. My silence was louder than any accusation. My calmness was sharper than any blade. She wanted me to shout, to demand explanations, because anger would mean I still cared. But silence. Silence meant it was over. Her lips trembled around my name, broken and pleading, but I didn't flinch. I didn't offer comfort. I didn't offer forgiveness. I had nothing left to give her. I turned without another glance, my back to the table, my steps steady, deliberate. Behind me, I could hear her choked sobs, Jason's awkward shifting, the weight of everything crashing down on her shoulders. But I didn't look back, because in that moment, walking away was the loudest, strongest answer I could give. As I walked out of that bar, leaving Emily and the life we had built behind, memories came rushing in like waves crashing against a shore. I thought of the day we first met, when her laughter was innocent, when her eyes lit up at the sight of me. I thought of our wedding day, standing at the altar, promising forever in front of family, friends, and God. I remembered the trembling in her voice as she said, "I choose you, Daniel, always." Back then, those words felt eternal, but promises are fragile, aren't they? They can shatter quietly long before the final crack appears. And somewhere along the years, Emily had let go of hers. For 12 years, I gave her everything I had. My patience, my loyalty, my dreams. I trusted her with the deepest parts of myself, never doubting that she was holding on just as tightly as I was. But now, standing in the cold night air, I realized the truth. I had been clinging to someone who had already let go. It wasn't Jason who broke us. He was just a shadow, a passing figure who happened to be there when Emily stopped choosing me. The real betrayal wasn't in the man sitting across from her. It was in her smile, the same smile that once belonged to me, now freely given to someone else. And as painful as it was, clarity came with that thought. The woman I loved existed in the past. She no longer lived in the present, no longer lived in the Emily sitting at that booth. The vows we made were broken, not by anger, not by circumstance, but by choice. Her choice. And now I was making mine. The night air hit me as I stepped out of the bar, cool and sharp, almost cleansing. For months, I had lived with a heaviness in my chest, carrying questions I was too afraid to ask and answers I didn't want to face. But now, with every step I took away from Emily, that weight began to lift. I didn't feel anger anymore. Anger meant I still wanted something from her, an apology, an explanation, maybe even her love again. But I wanted none of it. What I felt was clarity, a calmness I hadn't known in years. As I walked to my car, I realized I wasn't just leaving Emily behind. I was leaving behind the version of myself that begged for scraps of affection, that made excuses for her distance, that held on to a marriage already gone. That man, weak, desperate, afraid, died the moment I placed that ring on the table. In his place stood someone new, someone who understood that love isn't proven by how much pain you're willing to endure. Someone who recognized his worth, who knew he deserved more than being an afterthought in his own marriage. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe without the ache of doubt. My life, though fractured, was mine again. The road ahead would be lonely, yes, but it would also be free, free of betrayal, free of lies, free of a love that had stopped being love long ago. And as I unlocked my car door, I whispered to myself, "You're stronger than this, Daniel." Stronger than her betrayal. Stronger than the pain she left behind. Betrayal cuts deeper than almost any wound. It shatters not just your trust in someone else, but the way you see yourself. For a long time, I questioned if I was enough, if maybe I had failed Emily somehow, if her laughter with another man meant I was lacking. But the truth is this: her choices were never about my worth. They were about hers. Walking away that night wasn't the end of me. It was the beginning. The beginning of a life where I chose myself, where I refused to stay where I wasn't valued, where I finally understood that silence and self-respect speak louder than anger or revenge ever could. And if you're listening to this, if you've ever felt the sting of betrayal, hear me clearly. You are not alone, and you are not broken. Share your story, heal your heart, and never forget, your worth is greater than their betrayal.